Hello, and thanks for tuning back into the channel. So before we get started, I do want to say a genuine thank you to everyone who's been watching the video so far, if you've left a comment or if you've subscribed. I'm not just saying this to be humble, I honestly didn't expect this kind of response. And it's only been a couple of videos, we've got over 10 subscribers, there's been over 11 hours watched of content, and I'm just genuinely very grateful for that. I know it's still very early days, but this has been a brilliant passion project for me. As I've said from the beginning, I'm not trying to build some huge YouTube channel. I simply just want to find a place where I can share some of my thoughts, whether that be on retro gaming, talk about collecting, and hopefully just, help a few people along the way with some ideas of how to save a bit of money, push more into that physical collecting side of things. So whether you've subscribed, whether you've left a comment or just watched a video, thank you. I genuinely appreciate anyone who's taken that time to support the channel, and I honestly thought that maybe only one or two people might be that interested, so having this response so far has been a really nice surprise. It's kept me very motivated. I just want to give a shout out to the original group chat. You all know who you are, but a special thanks to Brian, Sam, Craig, Benji, John. You guys have been incredibly supportive from day one. I've really just enjoyed sharing those videos and chatting about old games with you anyway, but it genuinely means a lot that you have stuck around with the channel. And it's really been great reconnecting with people from the collecting community. As I say, I used to be involved quite a bit around 15 years ago, so I reached out to a few familiar faces. I'll give a first shout out to Stu. He's from Tutu UK, his channel is. It's great catching up with him again. He still continues to kind of blow my mind with the absolute legendary collection that he's got. If you've never seen his channel, please pop along. He's a great chap, and again, he's just really passionate, and that really comes across in all the videos that he does. Very down to earth, good guy. And the same goes to Pete from SNEStastic. Again, just one of those really nice, one of those genuinely really nice people in the community. He's got a fantastic collection. I always remember popping onto his channel every so often, and he'd sold a big collection, or he was buying something new, or he was interested in something else. So it's just really good to see that he's still just as actively passionate about the community and collecting. And it's been really cool to see him kind of choose some new areas to get into. But he's really into kind of 16-bit and, kind of older school stuff. So yeah, definitely I'll leave a link to both their channels in the description below. Just finally, just a thank you to everyone who's kind of discovered the channel through YouTube. I've had quite a few comments from people I've never spoken to before. So clearly the algorithm, I should say, is doing something right. And again, there's been a few people like Tizzle, for example. It's, as I say, it's been really nice to have people pop along and catch up with the videos. So a big thank you to all of you as well. Now, with all that being said, this would be a good opportunity, I thought, to kind of go through. I've got a massive big wallet of physical games across a few different generations. Now, inside here, I've got a few different games, such as, for the Dreamcast, the different PlayStations up till 4, all the different Xbox generations, and I've also got some kind of 4K Blu-rays and films mixed in as well, just because that's another thing that I'm really passionate about. So the plan is to just have a kind of relaxed chat here. We'll go through some of the collection, talk about some of my favourite games and series, and just hopefully share a few memories along the way. As you'll know, I recently uploaded a video that was all about the kind of digital only debate, and I hope I've sounded quite fair in why I think physical matters. So hopefully it's a kind of a really good way for me to show off, why I enjoy collecting so much here, and you can see that you can build such a good game library. And I'm never going to go full Bobby Boucher from The Waterboy and start saying things like, Mama said that digital's the devil, and all that stuff. I'm not anti-digital. I'm just more pro-consumer, and I like collecting physical stuff. So there's that. There is a few things missing in this collection. I've not got. There's no cartridge-based things, of course, here. I don't really have my kind of Wii and GameCube collections. They're all stored in their original cases. I did bust out the GameCube about a month ago just to have a try at it. It was just such a good kind of nostalgia trip. But I do quite enjoy playing GameCube stuff on kind of like 4K using emulation, using Dolphin. So emulations are something I'm really into as well. So it'd be a good a good discussion to have at another time as well. Now, if I talked about every game that's in front of me here, we'd be here all day. But if you like the look of the games, or you see your favourite stuff, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to have a chat with people about some of their favourite stuff and memories. So yeah, enough rambling. Let's get into the games. So I'll start off, great place to start, PlayStation 1. So, I never had one of these when I was younger, but my uncle had one, and it was a really big introduction for me for so many games and series that I still love today. I really enjoyed collecting for this back in like the early 2010s with things like car boot sales, Game Station, when that was, RIP, loved that place. And it was just, that was the time to get PlayStation 1 games. You were getting them for 50 pence, £1, whatever. And yeah, as I say, a lot of really, really fun memories of going back and playing a lot of the games I never had growing up. There's the Siphon Filter series, if that's how you say that. Despite collecting these games, 10 plus years ago, I've never played any of them until just recently because the PS3's backwards compatible. So I've really, really enjoyed finally getting my teeth stuck into that series. I'd love to do more on that as well. Resident Evil, you can't talk about the PlayStation 1 without going there. I've collected Resident Evil games on pretty much every generation since. Love that series. And of course, you've got a lot of your classics on there, like Tekken, the Alone in the Dark series, all that stuff. I'm missing some kind of Star Wars games. There was a lot of really good titles released in the PS1, but I've either just not got them collected or they're not there. And that moves on to the PlayStation 2. So that was my first big console after getting a Nintendo 64 growing up, which I would love to do a separate video on. But this for me was like this was the generation. This was the one that I felt the most closest to growing up because I was the most aware of it. I loved the N64. I loved playing Banjo-Kazooie and all these things, but PlayStation 2 has a very, very special place in my heart. This was the one where I was a wee guy, collecting, swapping games with my friends, reading loads of gaming magazines, and just there was just something so special about that generation for me. The console wars of what's better, Xbox or PlayStation 2, stuff like that. And I think, again, one of the series that I wanted that really, actually made me want the console itself was Time Splitters. Would you believe I used to remember seeing things about Time Splitters 1, Time Splitters 2 in the magazines, and that was for me, was like, right, can we get this? So my brother and I got it for Christmas. It was the Metal Gear Solid 2 version, would you believe? Still, the kind of the black console, but the box had a pack-in Metal Gear Solid 2 copy, and I would love to get that from a collection standpoint. There's loads of things on here. The Dragon Ball Z games were amazing. Jak and Daxter, Ratchet and Clank, Sly. So many of these kind of action platformers that I loved from the original kind of collectathons, like Mario 64 and Banjo-Kazooie back on the N64. I think my love for all that kind of games came from there. And of course, you've got things like GTA that just totally, eclipsed most things on that generation. So yeah, a lot of good times there. And we've got the PlayStation 3 next, and it's basically the whole reason why this channel exists. I was really, really inspired after picking up the console off of eBay to give, kind of YouTube another go. So there is a kind of a mix of nostalgia, and there's just generally fantastic games on the system. So I picked up a PlayStation 3, I've mentioned before, kind of later on in the kind of Xbox 360 lifespan, because that was the system I was using back then. And it was great to go back and revisit old series, and now I'm actually really dedicating my time to it, because I think I kind of made the mistake of buying a PlayStation 3 right at the end of the 360 generation, and then just before the PlayStation 4, and then as soon as I got a PlayStation 4, that was it, so yeah, the PlayStation 4 then, thankfully kind of, carried over a lot of things from the PS3, but it feels like, again, there was just such a nice variety of kind of new stuff, and IPs being created left, right and centre, which is so sad that it feels a wee bit like the AAA scene has just totally nosedived. I think when I was looking at the exclusive stuff for what is the PS4 compared to the PS5, it really is night and day. So the thing I love about the PS4 was it was actually the first console that I bought with my own money. as an adult. I was in college at the time. And I just thought it was the best, after playing the 360 for almost, must be about kind of like, I don't know, about 6, 7, 8 years, however long it was. So to get the PlayStation 4 at launch with Battlefield 4, that was just like, to me, that was it. Gaming has never looked that good. And I know we say that at every console generation, but the graphical difference and the fidelity of it was crazy good. It was good to see, things like obviously Killzone Shadowfall. I've really got back into Killzone after playing it on the PS3 again, so it'd be quite good to go back. I don't think Shadowfall is probably as well remembered, but I would like to revisit it. And again, you just cannot, own this console without things like Fallout 4, Uncharted 4, quite cheap titles, I think, overall, but are real standouts on the system. So let's move over from PlayStation. We've got the original Xbox. Again, I loved collecting for this. I had, again, that generation for me was PlayStation 2. That's the main console I had. But I did buy one very late in its life cycle. I think it was through Blockbuster, if anyone's from the UK. Well, I guess not just UK, it was massive in America and everything else. But yeah, I bought a used original Xbox from Blockbuster, and I used to love playing games in that. And then later on, when I got into collecting, in the kind of 2010s, it was a great time to collect for that. Halo, for me, is one of my favourite, kind of gaming series of all time. And I just so distinctly remember my friend playing Halo 1 and then Halo 2. When that came out, 2004, I remember running around to a friend's house, and it was just like my jaw hit the floor. Halo 2 was like this groundbreaking thing. And I think actually that was the biggest reason as to why I wanted to then get an Xbox 360 that following generation. I needed Halo 3. That was going to be the game that I wanted most. And I just think there's something very cool about the original Xbox. I don't know what it is. It's got that, that black and green, really kind of edgy 2000s. It just was so cool. It was just very aesthetically pleasing. The boxes, the discs, everything. There was just something that I think just had this very sharper and cool edge compared to what was the kind of the PS2 that was just kind of doing its job, doing it great. But yeah, just maybe lacked a little bit, I think, in that cool format, I think. Or that cool form, I should say. So speaking of then, moving on to the Xbox 360, I think that was probably my favourite generation, maybe I could say it was the last really great one. And the reason I say that, because I just feel like this was the generation where things started really dipping into the online thing. We started seeing a lot of things like online passes, and a lot of the things that just would then kind of tar the PS4 and following generations, I think, since. It really felt like we were moving from what was just, developers creating games, passionately. It really started to become a sort of a product. It became this big monster. But I think the 360 is just that sweet spot of it had such a great variety of kind of new IP. You've got things like, the Halo and COD debates that used to go on back in the day were incredible. COD 4 was probably the most influential game, I think. And Halo 3, COD 4 influential in the sense of, what it did to the first-person shooter genre. Moving forward, everything became Modern Warfare. Nothing was World War II anymore. And Halo was just quietly getting on with just shaping what online multiplayer would be after making its mark with Halo 2. So, I used to love playing, the kind of the newer series that came out that generation, BioShock, Borderlands, Mass Effect. These were all just such influential titles. I'm going to kind of merge these next two together. It's the Xbox One and the Xbox Series X. So again, that generation, it was PlayStation 4 for me. Similar, you're going to think I sound like a broken record, but very late in the PlayStation 4 life cycle, or at least a few years in, I decided to pick up an Xbox One quite cheap. This is when they ditched Kinect and all that stuff, and would you believe the reason I bought an Xbox One was because of Halo, the Master Chief Collection. So that's a really iconic title for me. And again, I think most of the kind of cross-platform stuff I was playing on PlayStation 4, first and foremost. That was my main console. But nothing really in the Xbox One kind of stands out. That's why I find it such a weird system that it's an entire Xbox generation, but it just lost any and all momentum because of how they started it off. But with Don Matrick, saying it's online only and all this stuff, but all of that story anyway. But I've also I've loved the Xbox Series X. That's been my console this generation. I just decided to, I don't want a PlayStation 5. I want to go with the Xbox Series X. And again, of course, why did I want to do that? It was because of Halo Infinite. So Halo has probably been the reason why I've stuck with Xbox for so long, despite a lot of the ups and downs that they've had. Probably more downs than ups, I would say. But yeah, it was great to experience some of the more up-to-date kind of Assassin's Creed games on this. And I've just been loving the backwards compatibility. There's games across all Xbox generations that you can put your disc into and play, and that is one of the biggest credits I'll give Xbox this generation, is that they really pushed for that, and I have to commend them for that, I must say. So fingers crossed, whatever Project Helix is or everything else, I think there might be hopefully an emphasis on preservation, at least first and foremost, even if we end up going into that kind of gloomy all digital future. If there's a way that people can still retain discs or keep their old backlog going, I think that's great, because if the PlayStation 6 rolls up with no disc drive or no way to play any previous discs, then what's the point? Everyone's just going to stick to where they are and probably move over to Steam. But hey, I'm rambling again. But yeah, just loads and loads of different offerings, I think, across PlayStation and Xbox. That was just the best places to play. I loved, a lot of things that Nintendo were doing. The Wii was such a fun party system. I loved the GameCube, very nostalgic for that. I have dabbled with the Wii U as well, but as I say, I've not really collected too heavily for those systems, so you're not really seeing them here. I just wanted to finish by showing off some of my 4K Blu-rays and DVDs. I recently got myself a LG G5 TV, which was like this was a massive purchase. Hadn't bought a new TV in probably about 10 years. So that was amazing. And because of that, and because the Xbox Series X is a 4K Blu-ray player, I thought I'd best start to sort of buy some. So again, huge fan of Star Wars. You'll notice I've got some Blu-rays in here. Shout out to Brian. He's lended me some of his copies of some 4K DVDs. I bought myself the Dune movies. That was probably the first one that I wanted to buy. Get some Blade Runner in there as well. I've got some of the Bond films. I want to try and get some of them on Blu-ray, the Daniel Craig ones. Again, just and a bit of a Bond theme at the moment, I think, having bought some recently on the PS3. And then I'm really into comedy films as well. If you've ever seen Jackass, there's a band called CKY. And me and my brother used to just absolutely laugh our heads off watching some of those DVDs. And of course, there's Austin Powers, so oh, behave, baby. You've probably seen quite a few Austin Powers references throughout my videos. So yeah, that probably tells you everything. So yeah, I realise I'm getting over 18 minutes here. So thank you so much. As I say, if you've stuck around and you've been listening, please keep leaving comments. Let me know if I've missed any games you want to talk about, or maybe you want to see a video on. I've got really big plans to show off more gameplay, because I've got a new capture card and it works really well and it records for ages, and the size of it, of the video files, are not that massive, which is great. I've also just recently bought an absolute mother load of PS3 games in a big bundle that I won. So I'm going to be super happy to show that off. And I have just bought, various other titles along the way. So I just want to say a final kind of thank you to everyone that's subscribing so far, and it's been really keeping me motivated. Despite a few technical and editing issues that I've had, I have sort of persevered, and I've been really, really enjoying it. It's been a worthwhile experience and improving my skills and getting more creative. So listen, thank you all again, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers.